Hi, today I'd like to introduce you to the WonderMill and show you how easy it is to get good nutrition through whole grains and flours for you and your family. It's simple and easy. There's no other mill on the market that is as easy to use as the WonderMill. Let me first start out by saying that the WonderMill comes with an excellent owner's manual. When you receive your mill, take a few minutes and actually read through it. I know that most of the time we don't like to do that, but there's some great information in here. One of the most important things is right on the back of the mill is our address and our phone number. And if you have any questions, if you're in any kind of doubt, please call the number and we will answer your questions so that you can operate and your mill will function properly for years and years. Also, there are great recipes inside of the mill. There's great tips on how to use your mill and where to set your settings, what grains you can and cannot grind, what things you can and cannot do with the mill. But this is a great resource, and I would encourage you to take just a couple of minutes and read through it so that you can use your mill properly. Number two, I want to show you how simple it is. The WonderMill has been designed and is developed, and what can I say, changed over the years to become the easiest and simplest mill for the homemaker to use. There are no gaskets or screws or hard things to clean. It's the easiest mill to use as well as the easiest mill to clean up after use. So let's just take a look at the mill real quickly. This is the mill, the main part of your mill. On the front of your mill you have your coarse fine setting, and it's developed to where there are three main settings: a pastry setting or fine setting, a bread setting, and then your coarsest setting is to the far right. Now, let me just say for 90% of your milling needs, you're going to be wanting to run it between the bread and the coarse setting. This setting gives a perfect flour for your 100% whole wheat breads and recipes that you need whole wheat flour for. Occasionally, if you're doing something like an age-old food cake or something that's very, very fine, you can turn it to the pastry setting and get a very fine flour. And if you're doing beans or legumes or anything that's larger, make sure you're always at the coarse position. Again, these guidelines and instructions are all found in your owner's manual, and I encourage you to get familiar with those. Second of all, you have your canister. This is the only other part, and as you can see, counting the mill, there's actually 5 parts to this mill. Very simple, very easy to use. First thing you're going to want to do is take your canister. This is your lid. Call it a cyclo lid, or sometimes it's called the lid with the tube because it has a tube on the outside that can pivot in and out. This pivots in and out for storage, so that when you're done not using the mill, you simply pivot it in and get it out of the way. When you're setting up your mill, you pivot the tube out, and on the inside of the mill, you'll see that there's a hole going through the mill. This is where your what we call the cyclo cup attaches. And all of these type of mills on the market, micronizing mills, have a cyclo cup. The cyclo cup guarantees that your canister will fill up evenly and smoothly. And actually, when you're all done, you can use it as a measuring cup. But just to attach your cyclo cup, it's really very simple. There's a snap-on ring here, and when you look at the inside of this lid, you'll see a little straight line tab or piece of plastic here on the lid. That's a guide. And occasionally that little guide will actually snap off, but there will always be a line there as a guide. On your cyclo cup, you'll notice that it's round except for this one edge. It has a flat spot right there on the top. Now that flat spot, when you push this on, lines up perfectly with that little tab. So you know that that's where it goes. It's a guide, and it helps you to know that's where you need to attach your cup. When you're done milling, after you've milled your flour, pull that cup off. You might notice that there's a little bit of flour inside. Tap it off into your container, and make sure that you empty that every time you use the mill. So you snap the cyclo cup on. The next step is really simple. Snap your lid onto your canister. Now you're going to notice that there's a spot in the top of your canister that is for air to exit. And during the milling process, this mill is the cleanest mill. Even though we have a filter that sits snugly just in the top of the canister, very, very rarely you'll find there's just a little teeny bit of flour that's gone onto that filter. Many mills on the market, as you might be fully aware of, emit a lot of flour and are quite messy to clean up. But the WonderMill has been designed with ease of use and a very simple cleanup. So put your filter on the top, and then you're simply going to push the tube into the side of the mill. Let me show you that one more time. On the side of the mill, you have a rubber gasket, and that is where the flour is going to come out of the mill once you start processing grains through here. One other thing, this is what we call the hopper, the top of the mill. And inside, there you go again. You got to watch that switch. Inside, you can see it says turn on before filling. Now that's important. You want to make sure that your mill is turned to the on position and it's running and making the sound we just heard before you dump your grain in here. And after you've set up your mill and you've got the position selected for the coarseness or fineness, this is how simple it is. You turn the mill on, and you're going to notice that it's at its loudest when you have nothing in it. But when you add grains and fill your hopper right to the top, and you can fill it to where it's heaping, then the grain and the flour now is shooting through this tube, coming through the micronizing heads and into the container. Now the milling is just about finished. There's a few more grains here in the center that are just about to disappear. And you're going to notice a change in sound here in just a minute. And we'll just listen for that. Go ahead and turn your mill off. Let your mill come to a complete stop before doing anything. But that higher pitch sound, once it hits that higher pitch sound, let it run for just a few seconds. That will clear any flours that are left in the milling chamber, in the milling tube, to be shot and cleaned right out of your mill. So it's self-cleaning. Now, as I told you before, after all of that flour, after a full canister of flour, you have a little bit of a ring of flour dust on your filter. It's not even hardly enough to worry about. In fact, for cleanup, I simply just shake it off a little bit. That's all you ever have to do. If it ever builds up more, you can wash it off. Pretty good catch, huh? You can wash that off in the sink. So take your filter off, pivot your lid in. I tap the canister a couple of times. This will get any flours that are on the side of the mill to go down into the canister. Now, as I told you before, your cyclo cup has a little teeny bit of flour in there, maybe a tablespoon, not much at all. And as far as cleanup goes, simply take your canister lid and set it aside, and you have a full, fresh canister of nutritious flour. One other thing, the mill comes with a storage lid, and this lid can be used for two things. Number one, when your mill is not in use, or if you keep your mill out on the counter, you can snap it onto the top of the mill to protect anything, dirt or dust or anything that your children might throw in there from going down into the mill. And second of all, after you're done milling, you can snap that on, and this becomes the perfect storage container for a fresh batch of flour. Now, one of the purposes of milling fresh flour is to get fresh nutrition. Everybody knows that once you grind up a grain, once you break down those kernels of grain or wheat or whatever it is into flour, you expose the nutritious oils, and oils can break down through oxidation and become rancid. So by putting the lid on here, and if you're not going to use up that flour, you can take this and stick it in your refrigerator or your freezer, and you've got a great way to keep your flours fresh. As far as cleanup goes, when you're all done with the mill, the only cleanup is, as I told you, you can take your filter and dust off that. You can take your cyclo cup and your lid, and you can take it right to the kitchen sink and rinse it off in the water. You don't even need to use soapy water. Rinse it off quickly, leave it out to dry, let it dry thoroughly before you reassemble it and use it again. If you're going to use it for a second batch of flour, then you don't have to you can leave it, the little bit of dust on there. But once you're done for the day with your milling process, simply take that, this is your mess. Simply take this to your kitchen sink and rinse it off and let it dry out thoroughly before using it again. That is how easy it is to use the WonderMill, the world's #1 rated grain mill.